We continue now at the top of Daf Chafam Beis in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 20b. Mar Breder Ravashi continues V'Itzur b'mei Rabbananhu. Rashi says V'Itzur b'mei Rabbananhu ha'ed. If the witness that we're talking about that needs to be reminded of his testimony is a Tzur b'mei Rabbanan, is a Talmud Chacham, so then afilu atzmo. So then it's actually okay. Even if the Baal Din reminds the aid, that's going to be fine. Rashi over here says afilu liatzmo shel Baal Din. Even the Baal Din can remind such an aid. The Tzur b'mei Rabbanan ilav dechi rami anafshe midkar, because when it comes to Talmud Chacham, if not for the fact that he's remembering on his own after being reminded, Shaper lo have a samech asfeikel lemekam vasudi, he wouldn't come testify unless he actually remembered on his own. Ki hadar Ravashi, it's like the case of Ravashi, have a yediyah lei b'sahaduse l'Rav Kahana. He knew some testimony regarding Rav Kahana. Amar lei said to him, midachir mar hai sadusa. He said, do you remember this testimony? Amar lei said to him, lo, I don't remember. Then he said, v'lav hachi v'hachi av. He said to him, well, isn't such and such, isn't this what happened? Amar lei lo yadana. He said, I don't know. L'sof idkar Ravashi. So then in the end, Ravashi did remember. Asid lei, and he testified for him. Chazi Rav Kahana dahava mechasim. And he saw Rav Kahana, Rashi over here says mechasim means megamgame. Toma Ravashi shei bedavar. Rav Kahana looked like he was shocked. How could it be that Ravashi is testifying about something that he just said he didn't remember? So Amar lei, so he said to him, meaning Ravashi said to Rav Kahana, misavrit aloch kasamich. Do you think I'm relying on what you told me? I actually paid attention to it, I concentrated, and I was able to remember on my own. And the Gemara continues, Tanan Hasam, we learned over there in the Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Olos, Hatalulios Hakrovos, let's say you have mounds that are nearby. Bein lo'iru vein laderech. Either these mounds are near a city or they're near a road. Echad chadashos v'echad yeshanos. It doesn't matter if they're new or old. Tameos, they're going to be considered tamei by virtue of the fact that they're near the city or they're near the road. Harachokos, but if they're far away, so chadashos tahoros. So then we make a distinction. If they're new mounds, we assume they're pure. But yeshanos tameos, if they're old mounds, then we assume they're tameos. We assume they're impure. Ezui krova. So the Mishnah says, what's considered close by? Chamisha mama, 50 amos. Ve'ezuhi yeshana, what's considered old? Shishim shana, that's 60 years. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, krova she'en krova heimena. No, it's close if there's nothing closer. If it's the closest mound to the city, if it's the closest mound to that particular road, it's considered close. Yeshanan, what's considered old? She'en adam zocher. If nobody remembers it, that's already going to be considered older. And the Gemara now says, "My iru my derech." What's the meaning of this Mishnah? What does it mean that you have these mounds that are close to a city or close to a road? What's the meaning of this? So the Gemara says, "Ilema ir mamish." If you're going to say that a city, it just means any kind of city, and derech mamish, and it means a road. It means any kind of road. So misveika mimechaskin antum. Are you telling me that when we have a situation of doubt in Eretz Yisrael, we're going to presume that there's tumah over here? Any mound that's near a city, any mound that's near a road, we're just going to presume that therefore it's going to be tamei? That doesn't make any sense. V'yam Reish Lakish, but Reish Lakish said, Ilam matzo, they found a pretext, v'tiyaru Eretz Yisrael, and based on pretext alone, they were willing to purify Eretz Yisrael, meaning to say the Chachamim want to take great efforts, great pains, in order to make sure that Eretz Yisrael is considered pure. So it would not make any sense at all to say that if you have a doubt over here, and there's some mound, that you have to assume that there's some tumah, that there's some mace that's buried over there. And so the Gemara clarifies and explains this Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Zera says, Ir hasmucha lebeis hakvaros. What we mean is as follows: a city. We're talking specifically about a city that's near the cemetery. V'derech beis hakvaros, and we're talking about a road. Also, we're talking about a road that's on the way to the cemetery. So now it makes more sense over here because you're talking about areas that are near a cemetery, and the concern is if it's close by. So maybe what ended up happening was the person wasn't able to make it out to the cemetery, and they ended up burying the dead in these mounds that were nearby. And that's why we're saying when you're talking about the mounds that are krovos, bein la'ir, bein la'derech, so then it doesn't matter if they're new ones, they're old ones, you're going to assume they're tamei. And let's say they're far away, so then again, if they're new, you can assume they're pure. But if they're old, if people don't remember, again, or 60 years according to Rabbi Meir, so then you can assume that then you should assume that there's some tumah that is buried over there. And so the Gemara continues, Bishlama derech beis hakvaros. Now I understand the concern if you have a road that goes to the cemetery. The zimnin de misarmi bein hashmashos, because sometimes what's going to happen is that bein hashmashos of Shabbos is going to come, and they're not going to make it out there on time. Umikru kavru betel, and then it's going to happen that they have to bury in this mound. So you can understand if it's on the road, if there's a mound that we see on the road towards the cemetery, it would make sense that we may have buried a dead over there because it was close to Shabbos. Ela ira smucha lebeis hakvaros. But if you have a city that's near a cemetery, Kuli lebeis hakvaros azli, but everybody from the city is burying in the cemetery. Nobody's burying on these mounds. And so the Gemara says, no, there is a situation that we're concerned about. Amar Rabbi Chanina says, and because women, if they have a miscarriage, there's no real funeral in that case, so the women might bury their stillborn. They might bury the stillborn over here in these mounds that are near the city. And also, let's say you have a situation of a person who has boils, they might bury their arms. So there actually is a concern, again, that you might have a burial over here on this mound that doesn't go to the cemetery. And the Gemara explains, until 50 amos away from the city, she'll go by herself and she'll bury the nefel, etc. But already if it's further away, so then you can assume she took a man with her, and therefore you can assume she went to the cemetery, she wouldn't bury in such a mound. And therefore you see that in general, when it comes to Tum and Eretz Yisrael, we're not presuming Tum and Eretz Yisrael. There are specific cases where there's reason to presume Tumah. In any case, why did we bring this whole mission over here in Alos? The Gemara says, Rav Chisda says, Shma mina mi Rabbi Meir. You see from Rabbi Meir has this amount of 60 years. So Haisa, Dusa, Shisin, Shinin, Midchar, Tfeilo Midchar, that when it comes to testimony also, 60 years a person will remember testimony. After 60 years, you can assume they won't remember. Just like when it comes to the burial over here, we're assuming that after 60 years, that's when people don't remember what happened at this particular area. But the Gemara says, Velohi, no, it's not true. You can't make a comparison to the burial and to testimony. Hasam hud lo ramyola, because over there it wasn't something they were supposed to be paying attention to. Avalach, but over here by testimony, came into ramyola, since it's something that's really like an obligation on the person to remember this testimony, afilu tuvanami, even more than 60 years, a person is able to remember. And we'll take a look at Rashi over here. Echad chadashas, again, if it's nearby, it doesn't matter if it's new or old. She'ein zman rochik shelo haya kantel, meaning there hasn't been a mound here for a long time. Deikol amemer keven the chadashi, there already you can say if it's a new mound. So since it's new, if really there was a dead body there, everybody would remember. So if it's new, it's a reason to assume that there's no dead. Nevertheless, tameos misafik. Still, we do say it's tamei dekevan desmucha leir, because since we're talking about an area that's close to the city, again, isha yechida halcha v'kavra sham nefel shela. You could say that a woman who was alone, so nobody remembers, she was all alone, and she had this nefel, and she buried the nefel over here in this area. That's why when it's nearby, even if it's new, you have to be strict. And Rashi over here continues, ve'ezui krova, what's considered nearby lo'ir, what's considered near to the city, she'anu omer maleh, that there we say sha'af hachadasha tameh, that even the new mound is considered tameh, chamisha ma'amah, that's if it's 50 amos close to the city, ve'ezui yeshanim, what's considered old, she'anu omer maleh, that there we say sha'afil hi rechoka, that even if it's far from the city, tameh, we're still going to consider it tameh, because again, nobody's going to remember, shishim shana, that's 60 years. She'ein krova heimen, and the other opinion was no, that if there's nothing closer, avalam yesh krova heimen, but if there's another mound that's more close, even if this one is within 50 amos, it's considered distant because there's another one that is closer. And therefore, if it's new, it's going to be pure. Because if it was true that a woman went to bury, she's not going to leave aside the one that was closer and go to the further one. So you can assume because there's something closer that this one is considered far away. And what's considered old, according to the other opinion, Shein Adam Zochra, Shein Adam Omer, Zochrani, Shaloh Yakantel. Nobody says that I remember there was no mound here. Uviyomi Nasa tells Zekan, and I remember that during my time the mound was made. If nobody says that, so then you say that that's considered old. And Rashi continues, Ila Matsu, Alila Bialma, Matsu Chachamim, and it was just some pretext the Chachamim found. Vechziku Bo Litlos Alel, Taras Eretz Yisrael. They use that to purify Eretz Yisrael. The Mesechet Nazir Perak Basra, this is in the last parak of Nazir. Alma Misveka Lo Mechaskin and Tuma Bebekar Kashal Eretz Yisrael. You see that in general, when there's a doubt, we don't want to say that there's tum in the land of Eretz Yisrael. And then again, the Gemara said, "The Misarmi ben Hashmasha shel Erev Shabbos came, meaning Shabbos is coming. Vein shows leilachad beis hakvaros. Maybe they didn't have time to get to the cemetery. Umuke shchin shevorei and noflin o shachotchin osan. Sometimes they have people with boils; their limbs fall off, or they cut them off. Ve'ever menachai metame, kever menames, and that's also metame. If you have a limb from a living person, it's metame, just like a limb from the dead. Kedamrinan bo'or v'harotiv, like we say in ha'or v'harotiv. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah: Ze omer zek savyadi. Let's say this witness says, "This is my signature." V'zek savyado shel chaveri, and that's the signature of my friend. V'zeomer, and the other witness says, "Zek savyadi, this is my signature." V'zek savyado shel chaveri, and this is the signature of my friend. Harei elu ne'emonim. So in this case, they are believed. Rashi over here says, "Harei elu ne'emonim." Dikotrei sadi de misadi akol ksav uchsav, because you have two witnesses testifying on every signature. Ze omer ze ksav yadi. This one says this is my signature. Ze omer ze ksav yadi, and this one says this is my signature. So in that case, the Mishnah says tzrichin l'tzaref imoyim acher divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says they need to find some other witness together with them, so you have two witnesses on each signature. Rashi over here says tzrichin l'tzaref imoyim acher sheyaker ksav yadei shneim. Somebody that recognizes both signatures. The trei sadi being because you're going to need two witnesses on each signature. Akol ksav uchsav, on every single signature. The time of Mefarish b'Gemara. The reason for Rebbe will be explained in the Gemara. The Chachamim say, Einam tzrichim l'tzaref imoyin acher. No, they don't need to bring someone else with them. Elanemon adam lomar ze ksav yadi. Rather, a person is believed to say, this is my signature. And the Gemara says, Kishatim Salomer, when you analyze these two opinions, L'divrei Rebbe, it comes out that according to Rebbe, Rashi over here says, Kishatim Salomer L'divrei Rebbe, Kishatamad L'sov Devar of Kosavar. If you think about what Rebbe is saying, it comes out that he holds, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video, on Daf Chaf Aleph, Amud Aleph.